Okay, this is questions about the dangers of astral time travel. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support Astral Club on Patreon, you can do so. When you join, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, Patreon email where we can talk back and forth, and a new chat room for patrons. If you're interested, there is a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a lesson to learn how to astral project, I'd be more than glad to work with you. All you have to do is go to the description and send me an email requesting further information. Okay, the dangers of astral projection. There was a lot of interesting information and questions that came to me as a result of that episode. So I wanted to address some of them because it's interesting when you guys give me your questions and when you express some of your own thoughts. I thought everybody might be interested. First up is Utopia Border Patrol. They said, thank you very much for providing more information on your experiences. And they said that they don't think they would be able to live two lives at the same time either, at least as long as both involve social relationships. They say maybe they would stay in the future for a few months and practice gardening somewhere in the woods or visit a place of knowledge rather than trying to establish a variety of relationships. I mean, if you could pull that off, that you might be able to get away with that, because it would, in essence, you'd be going to a place of peace, trying to recover your psyche, rather than getting involved in a whole nother life with all the complications that relationships often involve. So that could be a particular strategy. Ben Wolf had a whole nother idea. He said that if he went to a long-term future, he would try to enrich his life. He would go to future human civilization and go to their universities. He'd try to meet wise people in the future and tell them about his life and his advice. Well, I think you're getting involved there a little bit deeper than I think you realize, Ben. At the same time, though, going to their universities, you're going to ask to project far into the future and go to school. That's fine. But you and I are not going to get together in the future. Okay. I'm not traveling thousands of years into the future and then trying to find some school to attend. I've had more than enough of that in this lifetime. Lightning Round, who is a long-term supporter on Patreon, said thank you. You've shared very profound concepts in this episode. There are certainly a lot of ideas to reflect upon. I'm glad. Next one is Sodus X. And their main concern is they fear being stuck out of their body for prolonged periods of time, like hours or days. And they want to know how to overcome this. Well, the reason they're having problems astral projecting is they have a fear which is preventing them from properly projecting, because they are having some beginning aspects of astral projection, but the fear is blocking them. I think, though, that the fear is misplaced. I think there might be some misunderstanding here. You're not going to be out of your physical body for hours or days, even when I'm far in the future. And to me, days, weeks, and months and years are going by. The seconds are ticking by very slowly back in what we call the present in my physical body. I might be out for years, but when I get back, no more than 20 minutes has passed in the present where my physical body is. As a new projector, you're lucky to be able to stay out for a handful of minutes. So worrying about being stuck out of your body for hours or days is is an illusionary fear. It's not going to happen. Even experienced projectors can't make that happen. Typically, the longest that I would typically encounter would be a half an hour in the present out of your body. But much more typical is 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, especially for newer projectors. Newer projectors have a harder time staying focused, using their will to stay out of their body. So, believe me, this is a fear that you don't need to indulge, because your biggest challenge as a new projector will be managing to stay out of your body for any length of time before you're being pulled back inside. Rabbit Void YT ask, when you say that you were there for some days, does that mean that you would see the sun come up and the night fall? Or does it just seem as if time flew by? No, the sun rose and set, as in the physical, day after day. The days and the nights seemed longer to me because I didn't have a need to sleep. All I needed to do from time to time on those far astral projections was I would go into a deep meditative state from time to time. And I found that that would refresh my being. I would take in energy too from the cosmos, and I would absorb any energy that I could in the local environment. Remember, I've discussed in the past how you recharge your astral body, going through electrical storms, for instance, flying over high windy mountains, flying along crashing shores. All these things will help you to regenerate. So, no, I never slept, and the days did go by just like they do in the physical. So when I say days went by, I mean literally days went by. And I lived them minute by minute while in my astral body in the future. Utopia Border Patrol had another interesting question. I wonder if there are time places that naturally attract more astral time travelers, maybe even to such a degree that their presence is a known social fact and a part of daily life. There very well may be. I do know that in my theory of time, and based on what I have observed in my time trips, is that I believe that time functions like a river. It has many tributaries, inlets, harbors, rapids, etc. There are currents in time that are forceful and can easily sweep away an astral time traveler who lacks focus or will. When I project anywhere, and when I project into the future I have to keep an iron grip on my will and on my destination, because there's eddies, currents that are constantly ripping and tearing at me. It's not painful. I know it sounds like it is, but trying to get me to go in that direction or some other direction. So I have to focus and keep my will iron solid to avoid being drawn into these other areas. So that's my theory of time and astral time travel based on everything that I have experienced to date. John Payne had an interesting question. He said, Rick, do you think the Count of Saint Germain was time traveling forward and perhaps living a true life in the past? It's a distinct possibility. All the legends surrounding this enigmatic figure point out to perhaps a reality like that. Maybe he was traveling from his past and he was allowed to exist in what for him was a farther future. And without having to age. He would never seem to age. He would seem to have a variety of magical powers, which he did demonstrate. So it's an interesting theory. I've never encountered it before. So bravo to John Payne for coming up with that basic idea. Just as a side note, if he ever has a son, he should call him Max Payne. It'd be cool. Maverick Setsuna said he'd be interested in knowing more about what I meant by leaving parts of myself behind. He actually asked, am I being literal? Like Voldemort's Horcruxes. For anybody who's into the Harry Potter series, I am pretty aware of it because I saw the movies with my daughter. Or am I talking about something on a more theoretical basis? I think I'm being more metaphorical than I am literal, although I can't be sure. Sometimes in my darkest dreams, I think I'm being literal. I left little bits of myself scattered in the future. But most times I think that I'm being metaphorical, that I've just left, parts of myself behind in areas that I have traveled in the far future where I felt challenged or where I encountered other beings, whether I found myself very happy or depressed. So I think I mean it metaphorically. I hope I mean it metaphorically. I certainly don't want to be like Voldemort, leaving little bits of myself in all kinds of different people and places and things. It could be a struggle trying to remember where I'd left all my parts. I could see that would be a problem. Symbiotic Titan asked, when you were stuck in the far future, couldn't you just time travel back to the present? When I went to 500 million AD, it was the first time that I had ever traveled anywhere near that far. Previously, I'd traveled a few hundred years, maybe some thousands of years. But this one was just an enormous leap. Heck, I wasn't even sure that I'd be able to do it. When I arrived, I found that I was filled with power and ability to affect my surroundings in a very major way. I almost had superpowers. I could lift a boulder that I couldn't ordinarily lift. That isn't something that I could ordinarily do in your typical few hundred years or a few thousand years. But at the same time, things had changed too. It was no longer easy just to go back into the past. But it's difficult because I didn't try when I first arrived at 500 million years. I wanted to explore, so I did, and I spent days and weeks walking about that deserted landscape. And I fell into a deep depression in the process. That most definitely affected my abilities to travel about. Heck, for a period of time, because I was so depressed, I couldn't even fly. All I could do was just walk and just survey the dead landscape. So, I'm not sure whether it would have been possible in a normal state of mind just to go back, because I was so deeply depressed by this world that I found where I was the last human walking over planet Earth. When I recovered, I decided I wanted to travel forward further because my goal was to travel till the end of the Earth. And there was no way I was going to go back now, not after everything that I'd suffered. So I continued to push onwards. And I had a number of adventures, some of which I mentioned during my actual episode where I talked about my journey to the end of the earth. I think it was my first episode, or one of my first episodes, certainly. By the time I got to the end of the earth, where the sun had burned the earth to a cinder, it was billions of years in the future. And I was floating in space, and I found that I could not go back to the past. I was unable to do so. I think I'd gone so far into the future that I just was unable to return. So, what I knew I had to do was wait for a return signal. I knew that billions of years in the past, somewhere there was my physical body, and I trusted that it was going to send me a signal throughout all time and space, essentially a lifeline reaching out to me where I could hold on to it and be pulled back. And that's what happened. I hovered there in that space for I don't know how long, because how do you judge time when you're just hovering in space as an astral being? There's no way. I don't know how long I hovered there. I don't know whether it was a day, a week, a year, a millennia. I don't know. But eventually a weak signal came to me and I homed in on it. I would advise anyone who is a new projector to never travel that far into the future. You're not ready for it, for one thing. You want to make some short time hops. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that you're psychologically stable and that you're ready to absorb what you're going to see in one of these possible futures. Because there's a wide variety of things that you can see. And if you're not intellectually and emotionally prepared for what you might see, then maybe you should just stay in the here now and just fly around and maybe meet some spirits here. That's a lot easier to deal with than trying future trips, much less far, far future trips. Because we all think that we've been alone from time to time, but you don't understand what it is to be truly alone. I think I'm one of the few people on earth presently who know what it's like to be truly alone. The last human in existence. That's pretty much the definition of alone. Well, okay. I think those were the questions that I wanted to answer, and y'all hit me with some good ones, so I thought it was worthwhile to answer them and to make sure everybody is pretty much brought up to speed as to what's involved in the dangers of astral time travel. Well, if you liked it, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds, subscribe if you haven't already, and please hit me with those questions and comments because you never know when they're going to show up on an episode of Astral Club. Well, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.